Hello, this is Chala Dincoy, the CEO and founder of The Repositioning Expert. Welcome to another edition of my podcast, Naked Marketing. Today we have Sam Gupta, who is a guest and who's going to get naked with his honesty and tell us all about his marketing mistakes. But first, let's find out what he does for a living. Tell us what you do, Sam.
Hey, Chala, first of all, thanks for having me. And I am so ready to be naked. Okay. I am so excited to be here. Okay. So about me, what we do and who we help, we are in the ERP business. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. If at all your audience may not be familiar with it, but the easiest way to understand this is going to be these are integrated systems. So once the company grows, let's say $10 million, $8 million, that's where they need the cross-functional processes from your sales to operations to finance. They all need to be connected. And that's when these systems are going to be handy. The other way to think about ERP system is going to be every company requires some sort of financial statement. So when you need the financial statement, you are probably going to require an ERP system. So who do we help? We help every CFO and CEO out there, okay, of the manufacturing organizations, distribution, retail, e-commerce are the primary companies just because they can accomplish a lot more using the ERP system. But I don't know a company that is not going to require some sort of ERP system.
Gotcha. So you said mostly manufacturing and what else?
Distribution, e-commerce, so any product-centric companies are definitely good candidate for ERP systems. But again, even the professional services companies such as marketing agencies, development agencies, they are going to require some sort of ERP system. They might not require at $10 million point, but they probably will require at, let's say, 40, 50, 60, depending upon how much volume they have.
I gotcha. And what does it say behind your head?
What is this? Like the
Yeah,
hello?
yeah, the logo. What does it say?
Oh, it's WBS Rocks. It's WBS Rocks. Am I okay? WBS Rocks is the podcast. I'm a podcast host myself.
Oh,
Our podcast is targeted towards the CFOs and COOs.
uh-huh.
So yeah, it's a very educational podcast for CFOs and CEOs. We talk about a lot of different things from the digital transformation, ERP, to manufacturing processes, anything and everything that CFO is going to care for.
So how did you get into ERP?
How did I get into ERP? I guess, I grew up in a very manufacturing and distribution centric background. Then when I started my career, I got hired by a consulting company and they wanted me to do this from day one, I guess,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how, and that's been 20 years since I've been doing this, and it's been an amazing journey.
So what is typically for people who are not as familiar with the ERP world, what is like, let's say the most expensive problem you've ever solved?
So the most expensive problem is going to be not able to scale. Okay. There comes a point in the journey of a company when you are going to struggle to scale and grow. And Chala, I don't know if you remember, from your marketing class, there was a concept called crossing the chasm. Okay, so the whole concept is once you reach that chasm point, it's very hard to grow. In most cases, the reason why companies don't grow is because let's say they started as a startup, they had their own processes. You have 4 or 5 people, each are handling their own departmental responsibilities. Once you add more people, you don't necessarily have sort of the documented processes. You don't have that cross-functional collaboration. So that's going to be sort of the bottleneck for the companies after that point. If you don't standardize your processes, if you don't systemize your business processes, it's going to be really hard, because what is going to happen is, even if you are, let's say, able to grow your revenue, your expenses are going to grow faster than your revenue, and you will not be able to survive in the market unless you simplify your business, you standardize your business, and you implement some sort of tool that is going to give you that cross-functional ability to be able to collaborate in your process. And that is going to be your order to cash. So, any company that is processing some sort of sales transaction is going to have some sort of order, and they are going to be collecting some sort of cash. So this is the process that we talk about. It's called order to cash. It's going to start from your marketing to sales to your operations and then finance. And then you have the procurement as well, which is called procure to pay, meaning you are going to have some sort of need for your expenses. You solicit your vendors, they provide some sort of goods, and then finally you pay them. So these are two main processes of the ERP system that the majority of the companies are going to need. So the most expensive problem is going to be really related to their growth. Once they are stuck with their growth, let's say $10 million, $20 million point, that's when they are going to need our help.
That is really great. So the reason why I ask is because I also have another podcast called Polish My Pitch. And the way that we start even opening our mouth is by talking about the pain, because 70% purchase based on pain. So yeah. I'm always curious about what is the most costly pain that you solve. So who seems to be, the most guilty of this lack of ERP system as an industry that you've encountered?
So who seems to, that's a very interesting question. I guess, everybody is in the organization because they all are struggling. But the challenge that organizations typically run into in the managing the expectations of all stakeholders. So I don't know if I'm going to call that CEOs are going to be most guilty, but they should be, because they are the ones who are responsible for this cross-functional stakeholder management, making sure that everybody is sort of able to do their jobs, everybody is efficient in their jobs, productive in their jobs, and they are rewarded appropriately for their job. So I would say it's probably going to be the CEO, but when you have these pain points inside the organization, everybody's life is probably going to be hell. Okay, just because of the conflict that you are going to get in the organization, a lot of blame game, just because, again, people are driving the process, which is amazing, but they need to be augmented. They need to be enabled using these systematic processes so that you don't have a lot of decision making involved. The decision making needs to be done by the system. People are really good at tweaking the processes, not tweaking, I mean, customizing the processes as per the specific situations that customers might run into in a given situation. That's what people are good at, right? So when we put people in the right places where they need to serve the customers, they need to do the marketing, they need to do the customer experience, they need to really take care of the customers and vendors and the employees, that's when people are really good. But if you don't decouple that process aspect of the problem, then it will be really hard for the organizations to grow.
And what industry do you find most guilty of that?
Again, I think the more or the heavier the assets that you have in your organization, the more moving parts that you have in the organization, the higher chances you are going to have that you have the most pain. And that's why manufacturing organizations, the construction organizations, these are the ones that have a lot of different moving parts in how their products are built, in how their costs are tracked. And if they don't, for example, let's say I take an example of a machine shop, and I don't know if you're going to be familiar with the machine shops. This is a very, contract-centric manufacturers. Typically what manufacturers do is they are serving another manufacturer. They are working on a specific job that goes in some sort of machine, equipment, whatever. So what these manufacturers do is they are working for a customer, which is going to be another manufacturer or retailer or consumer. And if they cannot track their cost appropriately, if they cannot allocate their cost appropriately, then for them, it's a huge issue, because they can run out of their business. They need to, they may have to shut down their operations. So I would say the heavier the assets that you have in the organization, the more moving parts you have in the organization, and these are going to be very asset heavy organizations. Any of the manufacturing, distribution, construction centric organizations are probably the most guilty, I would say.
Yeah. So let's talk about marketing. I mean, I'm, really interested in what is the biggest mistake that you've ever made in your marketing?
So in our marketing, and it's been a learning, it's been a journey, Chala. I'm gonna have to mention this, even though I have had a lot of background in sales and marketing, and I thought I had it. Okay, but honestly speaking, I made so many different mistakes as part of my personal journey. And one of the mistakes that since we have very long sales cycle, we have a lot of people involved in the sales cycle. And typically, when you think about the long sales cycle, I'm pretty sure you have come across this as well, Chala. Talking to your customers, when you think about these long sales cycle, it's going to be really hard to attribute those marketing dollars and to find out whether marketing is really helping you. And these organizations tend to be very sales driven. So were we, and so were our competitors. And we were always sales driven. We were getting leads from, let's say, our OEMs. We were getting leads from a lot of different referral channels that we had developed. But as soon as COVID hit, okay, all of those channels started drying. Okay, we didn't have any investment in the inbound marketing whatsoever. We didn't. So the way I like to think now of the inbound marketing, it's almost like your intellectual property that you are building as part of your organization. When you do your outbound, you make that call, you send that email, that's it, done. Your investment is done. That's your sunk cost. Okay, but in case of inbound marketing, so in our case, we didn't really have any sort of branding presence. We didn't have any sort of domain authority pre-COVID. So we had to struggle a lot, and we had to figure this out. Before COVID, if anybody tells me that, you need to do inbound marketing, I'm like, are you serious? I'm calling these guys, I'm talking to them on a daily basis, and you are telling me that since I'm already on the phone with them, they are going to come to my website and they are going to visit and they are going to dial my number? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so we never invested in inbound marketing. I used to argue with marketers, but that's been the biggest mistake that I personally have made. Once we started on the inbound journey, oh my goodness, I mean, now the same people are coming to me, they are asking for my advice. Okay, how can we buy these products? So now I become the sort of the thought leader, and I am advising the same product that I actually want to sell, to be honest. It's the
So
same pitch.
what kind of inbound marketing are you doing? Give us an example.
So we have many different channels that we have, and that is going to be, we started with our blog. We built really thought leadership around the blog. Then we started our podcast, so we do a lot of content from there. We have our YouTube channel. We publish a lot of content there. Then we have this community centric aspect, and as part of the community, we have our LinkedIn Live series. We have Clubhouse rooms. We have Twitter chat. So you name it. I mean, we are all over the place just because we were hit hard. So we really had to figure out. And now we are doing way too much, I guess.
Which one of them are converting?
I would say all of them are equally effective. They all serve different purpose. For example, if we talk about social media typically is not as good at getting the leads in our experience, especially for our target market. In some target markets, people might find that usable. In our case, it's not as effective in getting the leads, but email has been always the most effective channel for us, just because we can send these personalized emails. And again, we don't literally personalize 15,000 emails. We sort of pretend that it's personalized, so that people are not feeling that I'm doing the mass emailing. So personalized to an extent, but that's been the most effective channel for us. The other effective channel, I would say, is really our content that we are putting, to be honest. And we are getting a lot of leads just because of our SEO efforts. And SEO is combination of your blog, that is going to be your podcast. It is going to be so many different things that we are doing. Social media. So now, if somebody argues with me that social media is not really paying off, why are you doing social media? I'm doing social media, number one, because of branding. Number two, social signals are incorporated as part of your SEO algorithm. So that helps with that as well. So should we be doing social media? Absolutely, you have to. But how are we balancing the budget? I mean, we still have to find the ROI in our efforts, and we still need to manage the marketing budget. So the most effective channel is really email at this point of time, and the inbound.
But so email is outbound, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so are you emailing to your own list or to new people that you're finding from LinkedIn or something?
So we have, big list that we try to maintain. So we qualify them based on our understanding of who is going to buy our products, to be honest. So it's a very offline process. And once we have that, in our case, we have to nurture them a lot. Okay, we have to nurture them over the period of number of years, I guess. Because the sales cycle could be anywhere from 6 to 9 months to 14 months, sometimes years.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you lose touch with them, but what I cannot do is I cannot send them emails on a daily basis because that's just too much. People don't make ERP decisions on a daily basis. So what we do is we have sort of the quarterly touch point, I would say, with each of our prospects. So these people have not necessarily bought from us or spoken to us. These are definitely, some of them are new, some of them are existing. So it's combination, but we have our nurturing campaign that we do. And our goal is just to stay in touch, just to stay on top of their mind. We don't like to over preach. We don't like to over coach as part of our email campaign.
That's really great. I mean, I imagine not a lot of people in your ERP space have podcasts.
That's a very interesting point. In fact, I mean, we did a study before starting our podcast, to be honest, and we were analyzing, okay, which are the brands that are really successful and what are they doing differently? And there were only a couple, they sort of didn't have the marketing background. They didn't understand how podcasting and this whole community aspect and the education aspect works. So their podcasts were very much like a sales pitch, to be honest, that nobody wanted to listen to. So even though there were some podcasts, and right now we are ranked as number one in the ERP category and number two in the business transformation category. And honestly speaking, we are not doing anything special. Okay, it's get down to the basics. You are in a class, and I am going to be coaching you ERP. I'm not going to be selling anything ever. Okay, that's a mindset that we try to take on the podcast, and that's probably the reason why people just absolutely love us.
Oh, that's wonderful. And does it actually convert from listeners or from guests?
So we never take an approach where we are actually trying to convert our listeners to sales. So we never like to do that. But has that resulted in the opportunity? Absolutely. Because now, people are inviting me to their shows. So I become sort of the thought leader. They are inviting me for the opinion on the purchases. So again, it helps with the overall branding that is going to give you far more opportunities than your outbound efforts. So does that help with sales? Absolutely. Okay. Are you going to have a measurable ROI? It's tricky.
I gotcha. I gotcha. So, I mean, I'm loving everything you're saying as a marketer because you're such a technical person, and yet you have such a strong grasp of marketing strategy and visibility and all that. That's wonderful. So, give us your parting advice. What advice do you have for our listeners and viewers around marketing?
So yeah, my advice is really going to be in terms of how you spend your money, to be honest, because the money that you have earned as the CEOs or the executives, it's really hard earned. It's very hard to earn money, right? So you really need to figure out how to spend that. And in my opinion, the best way to spend is going to be believe in the intellectual property. And in case of the intellectual property, especially when we talk about sales and marketing, the SEO, the domain authority that you have, the content that you are building, the thought leadership that you are building, that's your real intellectual property. Your cold call, your trade shows, your, whatever you are doing just from the outbound perspective, that gives you nothing over the period of time. So figure out how to balance that short-term and long-term marketing spend and invest more in the long term, because that is actually going to give you the kind of scale and the growth that you are going to need again in the long term.
Very nice advice. Now, how can people reach you?
Well, so I'm super popular on social media. Okay, it's it's going to be very hard not to spot me on, let's say, LinkedIn or Twitter. So the best way to look up is going to be Sam. SAM is the first name. The last name is Gupta. Gupta. WBS. It's WBS. ROCKS. Rocks is the brand that you can look up on LinkedIn, Twitter, anywhere. WBS.rocks is the domain name that we have, and the business name is ElevatIQ. ELEVAT, without an E at the end, and IQ, and that's the business. Again, if you go to elevatiq.com, wbs.rocks, fill out the contact form. My team will, help you get in touch with me.
That's that funnel. That's wonderful. Well, you're going to have all those links, folks, in the notes. So thank you so much for being here, Sam.
Thank you so much, Chala, for having me. I really enjoyed coming onto your show.
Thank you.